right.
Well, look at there. We got Instagram up. We're on multiple platforms with the StreamYard and in a studio.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. We are broadcasting from our new location. For our new guests that's going to be tuning in, it's a great place.
I can see the Georgia Aquarium from here, Water Coat, the Ferris wheel.
Oh yeah, we got some good views going on up here.
Wonderful view.
Yes, very great view of downtown, of the west side of the city. So definitely, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. Medicine in the Morning, broadcasting live from our studios.
He's got the headphones, I don't, but that's all right. So we're good. Now we're going to build this up. We're going to have guests in here very, very shortly. Going to make this real nice, homey feel.
Absolutely.
So we got that. We got some notes. We're going to expound a little bit on the AI talk that we had last week. A couple of interesting things on that. So haven't been following, haven't been noticing. So we've got that going on. We'll check one more thing here just to make sure. I don't think this went. There we go. I don't think we got on the much IG, but let's see. Give me a second there. If not, we'll try a second round, but we'll get on there. So while we're waiting on that, how was your week? We're closing out May.
Once again, another busy week. Closing out just a lot of events. More events. Big weekend for Memorial Day weekend. So happy holidays. Safe travels to everyone. So please, more than anything, safe travels. Enjoy your time. And then, of course, everything you do, stay safe.
Let's get that. I guess that will work for us. We are experiencing some technical issues as we work through everything. So we'll have the glitches worked out, but there's got to be a starting process, right?
Absolutely.
Just to make it that much better. That much for everybody.
Stream's still going. So we're good on one device. Internet is
there we go.
It's not strong this morning.
All right, well there we go. We're up on the IG, we're up on StreamYard, so hey, we're good. We're good now. So we're gonna get into a couple of notes here. Side note there, saw the Lakers got swept out. See what happens with him.
Well, LeBron played a good game. The thing about it is that the team still got to show up. It's still a team sport, team effort.
Right.
Shout outs to Denver going to their first NBA final trip.
Boston held it off last night.
Boston
got to see that.
Delayed one game. So I still think that series over with.
Well, here's something interesting before we get into these notes. So, LeBron and the Lakers got swept. Boston kept from being swept. In hockey last night, the Vegas Knights went up 3-0. And in the other Eastern Conference in hockey, the Panthers are up 3-0. We could have had sweeps across the board in the semifinals. I don't know if that's ever happened before.
Wow.
Just something to keep in mind. Something interesting. Boston kept that.
That is interesting.
The luck of the Irish fought that off, huh?
I told somebody to take the 4-leaf clover off their hat.
Right.
One of those Boston fans. And I like Boston. Boston has a very, very strong history as well. And I definitely have watched and supported that team over the years.
Unfortunately, my roots are in New York, so I'm kind of anti-Boston. But the Celtics are the only ones of them. Red Sox, no. Bruins, no.
Hey,
Patriots, no.
Melo put in his retirement.
Right? I'm good. Do not disturb there, so it can be good here. All right, perfect. So now we will get into some news and notes, starting with Minnesota. Big news from Minnesota legislators passing legalization bill before time runs out on this session. Governor appears to rethink his opposition to cannabis. So that's a little bit interesting. So meanwhile, in Florida, former pattern seems to be playing out around it. Could marijuana be coming to the U.S. Botanical Gardens. Have you heard about that? They're actually looking at putting that in as a recognized plant in the U.S. Botanical Gardens.
It's definitely interesting. It is a plant. It definitely has significant power and medicinal properties.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see why it would be it's continue to be excluded. You know, some people say, hey, it's just a weed. More than that.
Well, and that's something we've got to look into, because guess what? We were just down at, I guess we were both there actually. We were down at Piedmont Park, which is right next door to the Botanical Garden here in Atlanta. I wonder if they're going to be getting that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely a very popular place to go for families. Very, very scenic. Very peaceful, tranquil environment there as well. Got some good food as well. So,
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on, because if it's going to be allotted there, I think we need to work out a little trip down there.
hey, that would be interesting to see.
It's in our backyard. I mean, we're what?
Right?
A couple miles away?
Miles away, just a couple miles.
So how about this now? New Hampshire. Never say never. Governor announced that he thinks the legislation is inevitable. So as we mentioned a minute ago, though, he was long against it for the adult, but it looks like he's changing his heart. Now that comes on the heels of the New Hampshire Senate voting against the most recent incarnation of it. So are we starting to see a shift in the paradigm across the board, or is it still going to be state to state, or is it a mixture?
Well, what it looks like is just above New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire is not, falling in the same realms. It's kind of like same as the governor for Delaware, going from Jersey into Delaware, which is right across from Philadelphia as well. You got Philly that's pro, Jersey that's pro, Delaware anti. So as you go north, you have Maine that's pro, New York that's pro, Connecticut's pro, New Hampshire going against the grain.
But see right there, he's saying that he wants to sign a legislation that puts it in the driver's seat, focusing on harm reduction, not profits. So you're not looking at doing the taxable, sizable income return. You're looking at making sure that it's safe for the individual. So does that go back to the more research, more testing, more studies?
That means that if he wants it to be non-profitable, that means that the state needs to take it on. The state needs to administer and distribute at the cost of the state.
Right.
So that would be an interesting standpoint if that didn't have a conflict there.
Right.
So that you can, just by me making that mention, there's a noticeable conflict there. So let's see what that state's going to do.
But if you look a little bit more there, he's saying it's going to be similar to liquor stores. This path keeps the substance away from kids. So we advertise it, marketing, accessible, the bags that look like Doritos or other candies, maybe move away from that. So now the state's going to retain control of the marketing, the sales, and distribution. So they will have access to all of it, how it looks, where the ads are. Is it a late night ad? Is it, going to be something that's on certain stations, televisions, marketing wise, where it doesn't reach those consumers? And it'll be eliminating any need for additional taxes.
Well, there's no taxes if the state government administers it. So holding them responsible and accountable for the structure and the regulations of it, it's right there in your hands.
Right.
If you take the equity out of it, you're still not giving your citizens a chance to have a fair play in it, to take care of their families and loved ones. So I still think that should be totally reassessed, so that way people can take care of their family and loved ones.
No, exactly. And we're going to move down to Florida, which, of course, we just noticed that Santos is putting his name in for a presidential bid.
Well, I can say one thing that that gentleman, I definitely disagreeing with a number of things as far as decisions that he's making, especially down in Florida. And once again, it's still going down to he's keeping his name out there. He has the most controversy that he's keeping up right now, and unfortunately, he is the next strongest political candidate to Donald Trump. So that's kind of interesting that no one else has stood up from the Republican side of the fence to be the representation for the Republican Party.
Now we'll see how that one plays out because, hey, for example, we talked about another political party, which they just changed their name, but friend of the show, which I'm on soon, Chris Brown is affiliated with. We need someone in that party running for president. We need a third option, a fourth option. 2 isn't enough. That's for sure.
Definitely, we need a number of candidates in place. So we're just hoping someone have not only the courage, but the leadership. This country needs the leadership in place to get us out of the formalities that we're currently facing right now. Someone that's more decisive, someone that's more proactive to make decisions that are in the best interest of the country overall.
But before we get back to the Florida, but at the same point, we need somebody who's going to be expounding what you're saying, bipartisan, listening to the people, for the people, and open-minded.
Absolutely.
We have too much closed-minded on all ends, honestly.
You're totally right on that. And that's something that that Joe Biden going into office, and I just, to say it openly like this here, disagree with him going in. I currently disagree with a lot of the things that he's doing now and the direction where we're going. We are headed toward a very, very clear problem in this country. Homelessness is growing infinitely. We have a number of people crossing into the borders, which threatens not only national security, but also being able to maintain what we have here now. And right now, if we're not taking care of our citizens well enough here in this country, but we're sending a lot of money and resources abroad, but then we're not fixing the infrastructure right here, we're going to have a very, very, very bad foundation here.
Well, remember, we need to honestly go back to what it states in the Bible. Take care of your own backyard first.
Absolutely.
We need to take care of our country, our people, what we see right out here in front of us.
Take care of home.
Exactly.
Bottom line, what it is, take care of home. And we need help. We need help right here in this country. There are people that are suffering, not just in Atlanta, but all around this country. There are people that are suffering in numbers and in droves. Opportunity is being lost daily from artificial intelligence, which we're going to talk about a little bit even more. Just look at just automation. Look at the Amazon effect. Look at all of those things, right? Autonomous cars. We got it's so many things that are going to take people's abilities to earn a fair wage and living through technology. We're about to lose that. Through the immigration issue right now, we're going to lose that by not setting up additional structure and infrastructure for structure. Those opportunities are also being lost as well. And you got more people whose lives are going into peril and being turned upside down because someone's not making a decision.
Well, we didn't do it, but when we were out in Vegas, we saw how they had the automated Uber drivers.
Yes.
Now, most of the time they had to still have someone in place with them, but it was automated. But have you seen those tests? And I didn't bring this up last week when we talked, but have you seen the test where they're failing road courses? They're not seeing animals, children potentially, in front of them as they're driving. They're ignoring stop signs. If something's been changed on a road work, for example, due to GPS location, it's lost inside the AL of that car and they could run into something or someone.
Obviously, technology on that end is not at the par where it should actually be at. But unforeseen things like an animal quickly or abruptly running into the road, a child quickly running into the road.
Or after a ball, anything, right.
Especially if it can't see it. It's the same margin of error with a person who don't see it either and have to make a split decision. So unfortunately, there are going to be some technicalities in there where there's still going to be a 1% margin of error in there. There's no way to perfect it unless it had an eye or a satellite uplink that can actually look down and
ahead of itself, miles ahead, yards ahead, whatever.
Absolutely. That'd be the only way.
So this will all tie into the AI that we're going to get to. We've got to steer it off for a minute. We went off course, off of the map, and that's all right. So back to Florida real quick. So the cannabis initiatives are taking the roller coaster ride to the ballot. We've seen the ups and downs. A group has gathered signatures. Once the hurdle is cleared, there are the disagreements over whether the language meets the state guidelines. And we know how important verbiage is in these bills and legal needs, any of this.
Absolutely.
It guards you, it protects you, it safeguards.
That's right.
I've seen you use it a couple of times.
That structure is everything, and the jargon that's used in the orchestration of law is very important. And the way how it's interpreted is always interpreted by a judge. You have your law enforcement that actually enforces it. So, and for the citizens to follow.
Now, let me ask you that since you brought it up. You said for the law enforcement to enforce it. So, by stating that, that means that they are not allowed to do what? Interpret it.
That's correct. No police officer at any point in time they only can enforce the law. They cannot interpret the law. They can't tell you what your rights are other than the right to remain silent. Other than that, they cannot put themselves in legal matters. In today's times, there are a lot more legal matters that are actually coming up from how society itself has created some of the circumstances that's in front of it. So we definitely have to be careful because law enforcement helps maintains a level of structure, but we do need new laws pertaining to how those officers are trained and the circumstances that they actually work on.
And that by no means is a slight to any of our police officer friends.
I love police officers.
Absolutely. This is just stating how to protect yourself.
Their friends, their family members, their fathers, brothers, sisters,
we need them.
Mothers. So at the end of the day, there are a few men and a few good women out there that are wearing the black and blue. And shout out to them. I salute them because they are working a job. We do need them in everyday society. By no means they're out there to infringe on people's rights, but there are some out there that are. And for those ones that are, they should not be wearing that uniform. They are dishonoring the people that are out there putting their lives on the line from one day to the next. So, once again, we have to just really look at and assess not only the training, but the level of standards that we have to put into to match the expectations of the public at large. The public also has a responsibility to the officers as well.
No, absolutely. Let's also keep in mind real quick on that too. You brought up a fair point. There are corrupt, dishonest, however you want to put it, lawyers, bankers, people who work at the convenience stores. It's not that job, it's the individual.
There's a level of ethics in everything.
Absolutely.
And if it's not employed to make sure the holistic approach, the humanitarian approach, if you don't think about the men and women or the children that's involved, you're selfish. And we need a more of a selfless world so that way we can make sure everybody on our left and right and around us and around the corner is okay. And that's really, really important.
No, absolutely. But again, going back to Florida, even though we keep going here, which is great, they want to stop these outdated laws such as Mississippi. Sometimes the initiatives are returned after they're passed. We saw that in South Dakota. And in Florida, enough signatures have been obtained to set a Supreme Court review of the process. So that opposes the legalization claim. Single subject rule for the ballots in 2022, just passed us, and it will come back again in 2023. Will we have different news this time?
I think in that news, you have some leaders who will backpedal on negative circumstances or negative news that may come up, and then they're not well abreast of the circumstances to give a response that's suitable for the public at large.
Right.
So the easiest thing to do is say, undo that. Let's backtrack that. Let's tear that up, blow it up, and we'll start back over from scratch. And all of that's doing is the responsible people, when it comes down to the research and the information that's needed to continue to take it forward, is not being done.
Well, and at the same point, to our friends that are in government, that are representatives, whatever, it's okay to say, hey, let's try again. Let's do it differently. Learn from the process. If you got it right the first time, all of us would be shocked.
The crazy thing about ownership, when something goes wrong, nobody wants to be
Right.
responsible. And that goes for different leaders, whether it's a mayor or whether it's a governor, who put something on the table and then realize that, whoa, I made a mistake. Own up to that mistake and say, hey, what we will do is we will correct this and make it right.
Right. So now, back to a minute ago, what we said about the botanical gardens. Guess what? It is now on display at the U.S. Botanical Gardens. And Eleanor Holmes put it in there from D.C. Wonders the fact that is it legal under the federal law might make the request a bit more difficult to grant. But as of right now, it is on display at the U.S. Botanical Gardens. How about that?
It's really interesting how they talk about the federal laws. It's still a Schedule 1.
Yes.
Okay. But then it's showing you that there's a paradox there for it. One, being there, but then creating a question about it.
Right.
So it's kind of almost like it's shaming the plan itself when you put it there, knowing that it should rightfully be there, but then you're creating this question. So which one is it?
Right.
And that's really part of the problem. That means that this person is really on the fence about it. They put it out there. Now their name is controversial, it's trivial on one side. On the other side, it's accepted. Hey, you keep on doing it, keep moving forward until they fall off the fence to one side or the other. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But speaking on that side, Massachusetts, which we just talked about with Boston, they voted Monday to overhaul their approach toward rolling out social consumption locations, kind of like the lounges, sometimes referred as marijuana cafes. The voters embraced the 2016 ballot questioning the legalization of recreational marijuana use. So what is that going to mean?
Well, what it means for that state in particular is somebody has to own it and take it to the next step. Because if not, it can go backwards. It's just bottom line what it is. The consumption lounges, I totally feel that if there's a lounge that you can safely consume, kind of like a bar, there's a responsibility for the bartender in those alcohol establishments to make sure that they don't over intoxicate a person. A lot of bartenders from one city or state to the next are required to be licensed.
Yes.
And registered. So I feel that the consumption lounges should follow the same standard, so that way people can go into those lounges and safely consume, and also have alternatives and remedies available for people when they go through cannabis intoxication.
So the training, education, knowledge, safeguards put in place, and in a safe location for them to, whether it's a new person who is just starting to consume or someone who's done it for a while, they can all come together, be safe, learn from each other, but be in a controlled environment.
Totally. And you should also have transportation alternatives,
yes,
just like
absolutely.
They do for taxi cabs outside of certain bars or
IDDs, any of those.
Certain ride shares that focus on the fact of people who consume in those lounges do need to safely get home. And those should be nonprofits that have some form of a state grant or state funding. Okay.
No, that'd be great. So people in those states, hey, you're hearing about this, start looking at that program. That would be a great way to help the community, help these individuals, but hand in hand working together to make this to where, hey, you know what, we can do these things. We can make this legal. We can make this an option because we can safeguard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit it right on the head, Nate. So on that one, we have to just continue to, one, continue to educate, two, continue to get more research in, three, to expound on conversations regarding what's going on between the ins and outs from one city to the next, or one state to the next, as far as the decisions that are being made.
So I'm going to hit this real quick, and thinking of this, so we're talking about the safeguards. Maybe they work out the way to go from these consumption lounges, getting pizza delivered to your home at the same time and drop you off, because guess what? Sometimes you get the munchies, right? You ever wondered why that happens?
Let me know.
Okay, so we're going to do this article real quick, so we want to get to the AI. So it refers to the increased appetite that often happens when consuming cannabis. Phenomenon is well known. We've all heard about it, seen it in movies. People talk about, hey, I'm hungry. Like, for example, hey, I'm sorry, but remember that drug ad years ago with the egg? This is your brain on drugs. Guess what? Anybody that's consumed, all they're thinking about at that time is, I'm hungry, I want Waffle House.
That's right. That's across the board.
They didn't sit there and go, oh, that's really bad. No, I'm hungry. They had the munchies.
Right.
So what happens is, first, it's important to understand that munchies are caused by the THC, which is the primary psychoactive compound in it. It interacts with the endocannabinoid system, which is responsible for, guess what? Regulating appetite, mood, and other psychological processes. So that's why you have it. Studies have shown that THC activates certain neurons, a region of the brain, in regulating the appetite. So directly, the THC activates the neurons that produce stim.
You just have to make it through it, and it takes some time. That time frame can be anywhere from 4 to 6 hours.
Well, that
So-
depends on your body mass, how often, how
Right.
much, all those things.
Right, absolutely. And there's not a bona fide remedy other than trying to sleep it off. And then even then, there's a level of uneasiness when trying to sleep with cannabis intoxication. For me, I feel like if I go to sleep, I'm not going to wake up.
Right.
And it's a weird
Paranoia
feeling.
sets in.
It's a level of paranoia. You have this flare heart effect,
Right.
where your heart's beating, you're just like, man, everything's kind of more enhanced, intensified to a certain degree. But I think cannabis intoxication itself, it varies from one person to the next.
Right,
The
absolutely.
effects and the feeling of it. So
Well, I mean, for example, we have had someone on the show multiple times who uses it multiple times a day. His level will be completely different when anything compared to what you and I might do.
Yeah.
Because he's continual and high dose. So, for example, though, the THC has been shown to reduce the production of leptin, a hormone that signals the brain that the body is full.
Mm.
So, by reducing it, the THC can make the person feel hungrier and more inclined to eat. So, that's a real quick idea of why you get the munchies and how it happens.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we definitely back then, as we was working with a specialist who actually created the infused foods, there was a level of concern about the safety.
Right.
As
there should be.
And that's why we just continued from there. Doc himself had concerns regarding how much was being infused into the food as well, and then being involved with something like that.
Right.
Could put him at risk, especially licensing as well.
Oh, absolutely. But, for example, and being that you've worked at many different events, in club rooms and whatnot, let's take example of St. Patrick's Day or New Year's. You have people who don't drink very often who go out on those days and try to handle with the people who are drinking 4 or 5 times a day, and we see what happens with them.
Absolutely.
Your level's different, your consumption rate's different, your body breakdown's different, so it affects them more. You're going to have people who show up at these events that go, hey, I want to hang out with you. I want to pretend that I can do what you do or be cool or whatever. And their consumption is going to be higher than it should be. And then what's going to happen?
I mean, for the moment, you gauge all of that just based off of how well you feel when you're doing it. As things just kind of come, you're not as mindful of consumption, and that's how you kind of lose track of what's going on. So, for everyone that's out there, whether it's holiday, hanging out with friends, make sure you're with family and friends so that way you can stay safe. If you're in the public right away, please be very, very careful. A lot more careful and a lot more mindful of your environments and who's around you, because you find yourself at a very, very extreme disadvantage.
Well, I think that's also a great spot as to why it's important to have these consumption lounges, so you can be safe and learn, and somebody can monitor and watch you. Right. Not your buddy, but yeah, you're fine to go to sleep.
The thing about the consumption lounge is it's kind of crazy because here in Georgia, when you think about some of the establishments, they allow smoking inside of the establishments. Right. Okay, they ain't talking about tobacco.
No.
But in certain counties, it's enforced more than others. So it's just something that we have to just look at overall when we go out. People want to self-medicate. A lot of people need it.
Absolutely.
For the most part. But at the same time, there's a mindfulness that you have to take when you are actually consuming. And you also want to be able to consume where somewhere it's totally and widely accepted instead of consuming amongst persons who are not aware and may be offended about what's going on.
Exactly. So now we want to kind of get to some of the mental health. And I saw a really interesting article. This is some stuff I've gone through. I know you have as well. But issue of parents trying to solve their children's problems. Now, that's kind of a slippery slope because as a parent, we want to help them, protect them, educate them. But sometimes, do we approach it wrong or do we go too far?
There's never, ever, in my mind, when you care about someone and love someone, that you can't go too far unless you fall in the realms of physical abuse or mental or psychological abuse. But for the most part, when people care, allow them to be able to care and do the things they need to do to correct and guide and keep their children in not only a good, healthy position, but a safe position.
Right.
And the laws today are taking that away from a lot of parents, and these kids not only don't have structure, they don't have discipline. So those are the two components that are really two important components that will keep the kids together and also keep society together. We're losing our advantage and edge on society now.
Well, I mean, look at what we've seen in the realms of the schools, where the kids are disrespecting the teachers and almost, in some cases, are causing violence to the teachers.
Yes.
So, perfect example. So now, in this, what's worrying America's Kids survey of more than 500 youths aged 9 to 13? First of all, at age 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I wasn't considering thinking half of this stuff. Number one, how much does it change?
Well, the exposure and access to information is tremendous.
But it's also not accurate information sometimes, so you gotta be careful.
That's correct. And you gotta think about the evolution of computers and technology itself, smartphones and so forth. You have to look at that. You go back to 3 decades ago, it was not readily available for everyone. It had to be something affordable at that point in time. 40 years ago, it was even more limited.
Right.
So 50 years ago, it almost didn't even make sense.
Yeah.
So you got to think about how much things have evolved over the years and what it is now. The kids these days have more access to more information, which creates more stress, more concerns. They have more decisions to make about things that they wouldn't have normally had, like us. You're only as good as the information that you seek and find. If you didn't have information, then hey, you just didn't know, it didn't affect you.
Right.
But now you have so many scenarios that are going on at the same time that applies to different people for different reasons, and it may be too much for them now.
Well, the study found that more than a third of children worry at least once a week. And I'm sure this, like right now, you've got finals going on in school, end of the year, so that's probably elevated some. But with their tendencies to, guess what, worry progression with the age. So the older they get, the more they worry.
You have more access to information, so you have more decisions. And then you have more things to account to those decisions. And you got to think, there's a flip side to everything. One favors one, one don't favor the other.
Right.
So when you think about that, you got a person that may be happy with the result, you got a person that's sad with the result. And if it affects you both ways, you can be happy for one person, but then another person's sad. Now, what are your concerns, your feelings, and sentiment in regards to that one person that you may have made let down or made
Right.
them feel sad? So it's a lot more pressure. It's a lot more trivial circumstances that people are involved in, and that's why depression is up. That's why suicide is up, and it's because people are not prepared to deal with those situations.
Well, like we're saying right here, reporting in that the feeling that it will never stop or go away. 48% of those surveyed of the 13-year-olds are saying that that feeling will never go away, as opposed to the 9-year-olds, only 22% of them are saying they feel like that will never go away. So as they're getting older, like you say, the more that it builds on them, weighs on them, progresses in their mind, keeps them worrying all the time.
Absolutely. And those are things that happen with exposure. Those are things that happen when you see things that are out of the norm.
Right.
And now you have all these questions of why and how and what to do when this happens. So it's a lot more responsibility.
So how about this though? Ages of those 9 to 11, 75% say they turn to their parents first for information or advice. But as they get older, that number drops. 12 to 13-year-olds, only 51% go to their parents first for their information or advice. So they're going to friends, they're going to the internet, they're going to somebody else other than their parents.
Absolutely. And it's just because in society standards now, the parents are not the cool ones.
Right.
And it's up to the parents.
You don't understand.
Right. It's up for the parents to be closer to their children at the same time, definitely spending more time with them, and then being an influence on their children. I can't emphasize that enough, because if you're not, especially in single parent homes, it can be a lot tougher. So I definitely understand that.
So a couple of things that were in this report was saying, number one, be there. Validate your kids. Talk to them when they're facing the hard times. And I think the validation is important. That's something I've tried to do, because me growing up personally, and as I got older, of course, I can kind of more understand where it came from. But at that time, if I brought home 5 A's and a B, I didn't get the, hey, you know what? Good job on those 5 A's. Good for you. That's great. I got the, why'd you get a B? What'd you do wrong? You're not studying enough. So I didn't get that validation. So I felt like it wasn't good enough.
Understood. Understood. But that can also be looked at two ways. And sometimes that not having a discussion with the child and putting their feelings right there on the table, so that way you can look at it, assess it, have a discussion about it, and maybe establish it the way it needs to be, or redirect it.
Correct.
So, you know, the tough part about life is, once again, we're learning the lesson before we even took the test.
Oh yeah. And we don't stop learning until we're 6 feet under.
Right. And the tough part is the test, we're failing daily because we never knew the lesson.
No. But we do have some tips, hopefully, that will help some people. Know what worry looks like. For example, pay attention to the body language. Are your children having stomach aches, headaches the same time each day? My son was having those. Check in to see whether their emotions could be contributing to their physical feelings. Stress, worry, a problem with school, whatnot. Normalize the worry. Don't just do the rub dirt on it, get over it, walk it off. Let your kids know that it's normal to worry and have concerns, because we all do, don't we? Every day.
Yeah.
So normalize that. Validate their feelings. Like we said, hey, good job. I understand that you're going through something. What can I do to help? How can we talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the answers. I don't have the answers. You work together to get those answers.
Right.
So don't belittle them for, you know, I had a headache because I didn't do well with this, or I'm worried about this test. Try to help them. Understand that. Ask the kids what's on their mind. Let them speak openly and freely.
Yeah.
Hush.
Yes.
Let them talk.
Well, the biggest part in today's time now is that kids have access to adult-related information. So you have kids talking to adults like they're adults. And I question that to a certain degree.
100%.
Because you cannot allow it. But you do have some children that have observed and have so much wisdom about themselves because they sit and they watch and they listen, where others they sit back and they do.
Mhm.
So it's a difference between some, and you just have to look at for the tendencies and traits of that child.
Well, there's also a difference between, like we said, book smarts and common sense street smarts. Just because you've learned what it said on the internet doesn't mean you know how to apply that in everyday application either.
That's correct.
That's a tricky road.
Mm-hmm.
So, ask your kids what's on their mind. Open dialogue. What's on your mind today? Here's the one I think that is hard for us, especially as parents. Don't be too quick to get advice. That tricky slope too.
Don't be too quick to give advice. Let me say this here, and this is along the lines of preparedness. For the way you're gonna be from one day to the next, the what if games determine your response to everything in life.
Right.
You should have an instantaneous response because you should have a way how you look at it, but then there's certain subjective information or circumstances that allow you to sway that decision in one direction or the next. And it's all about, is it pertain to you, or does it pertain to everybody in the room? So those are the outside things that you got to keep in mind as well.
Like they're saying here, ask questions, learn more about what they're worried about. Don't immediately offer the advice. What they mean by that is instruct your child in the direction of what would make them feel better. Talk through the ideas. Don't just say, this is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
How can we make it better? What do you think? Get them included in the conversation.
Most definitely.
Let them.
Most definitely. And the thing about it is that children are becoming adults at a younger age.
Yes.
Believe it or not. Because a lot more is upon them. And they do have to make more decisions. You have more parents now having to leave kids at home because they have to go to work and take care of the house,
job, whatever.
right? So you have children taking care of children. They have children figuring out their own way. And unfortunately, those things you can find out a tragedy just around the corner just because he wasn't there.
Yeah. And this one here, for example, about this part today. If your child forgets their lunch or is worried about a sports tryout, don't try to rescue them every time. We do have to fail some as individuals, regardless of your age, to do it. It's okay if they have to buy lunch that day or go to the tryout with butterflies. That's kind of, helps keep that edge at times, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, this is hard. I know it feels hard to not immediately step in, but working with the child to develop these healthy coping mechanisms. How many times did we fail, whether it be a tryout for sports or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Watching them struggle and fail is hard, but guess what? How do they also learn? How do they grow?
One thing you gotta tell them: first, if you do not succeed, try again. You gotta instill in them not only to follow up, but to get bigger, better, or take a different approach. Never give up.
Right. So we're gonna go in this AI here. This is gonna follow up a little bit. So we got something new. We talked about ChatGPT last time, right?
Yes.
And of course, the pandemic and all this stuff, because half of all the counties lack the amount of proper therapists. Even with the Affordable Care Act, you still have a lot of problems. Now, here's something that's interesting. You've got the entrepreneurs, like we talked about the AI and the rebirth and the evidence of the AI is not quite there, but there's now a new one that's come out. I don't know if you've heard about this or not. This is a new one called Eliza. Okay, which uses learning pattern recognition, AI, combined with natural language programming to sound like a therapist. But is it going to be accurate? Here is a little conversation that was done. The woman, well, my boyfriend made me come here. So the therapist, Eliza, goes, your boyfriend made you come here? The woman goes, he says, I am depressed much of the time. Comes back, I'm sorry to hear you're depressed. The woman says, it's true, I'm unhappy. Then Eliza comes back with, do you think coming here will help you not to be unhappy? A slippery slope, isn't it? I mean, how are we going to know that it's going to give proper information, the proper response? Or is it going to make this woman feel even worse?
I'm totally opposed to this just because I feel a human being who has went years of effort and training, but also experience through their externship and experience. So when you try to program a being that's not human to do things that human would do, I just don't that.
How about this? Though hailed as an AI triumph, that Elisa's success has terrified Weizenbaum, who was once interviewed, saying he said students would interact with the machines as if Elisa was an actual therapist when this was created as a party trick.
Okay.
How about that? This was created as an app that, hey, what should I go eat today? Hey, should I buy this? Hey, what do you think about this song? Now it's being used as the actual therapist. That is very, very tricky.
It is.
The computer will not, for example, experience loneliness in any sense that we can understand.
Okay.
There's a problem. The core content of the medicine that it is a relationship between human to human, and AI can't replicate that.
I totally agree with that. And I think, once again, when we allow artificial intelligence to take jobs and opportunities from individuals who have educated themselves, no one's safe with artificial intelligence. Whether it's the low-wage employee to independent specialists.
Right.
So, everyone needs to be mindful that they need to be aware of changes there in front of them.
Correct.
I think people should push and lobby to delay this occurrence because one, other opportunities have to be developed by government to
Regulations.
literally supplement the loss of opportunity if they continue to keep pushing this AI agenda.
Right. Because Bon Ku, the director of the Health Design Lab at Thomas Jefferson University, pioneer in medical invention, I have a human therapist and that will never be replaced by AI. The AI, instead to reduce practitioners' tasks like recording and keeping data entry to free up more time for humans to connect.
Okay.
But is it? That's going to be the thing. So he even states that some of these mental health apps may ultimately prove worthy. There is evidence they can also do harm. Like you were saying, somebody needs to be monitoring, checking on it. What is their voice inflection? What are they talking about? Because this AI, I don't believe is going to say, you need to talk to someone. Can I get you medical help? Can I this? It's just going to respond with, well, why do you feel that way? Just keep that conversation going and not provide help possibly.
And I think that it will take the color out of life.
Yes. No, absolutely, because it's just the FDA, for example, is saying it intends to increase enforcement discretion, but how do we monitor and make sure that we have that proper discretion?
Bottom line, what it comes down to is taking a stand. And once again, I totally disagree with AI. Just every and but I don't clearly see to replace people's. I see that. I see of it. Work related will preserve their way
And let's think about it here. If you were going through something, yes, a phone call or a text might be person causing it.
Right.
You still don't get that connection as if you're there.
Now you told in this podcast, I was talking to a robot.
Mhm.
I mean, not the same.
No.
To look at, we have to totally look at it in from one to another man, a man to preserve those interactions, including the social component involved. The feelings are going to go gray, like it's just not there. Definitely have to work it good.
And I hope that you guys enjoyed us being back here. Feel different atmosphere. You guys, like we said before, still get up to show you products, possibly some,
Yeah, with this space is on people to join in discussion as well. We're not the foremost authority on it. We want to be able to build and add. We have some opportunities here, a small little tour of the place. On our stories, DM us.
So you reach out to us through any of these sites, Twitter even, 75 Instagram. I hope you guys have it. You.
Closing thought, seek social interactions. Sisters is out there. If you have any information to give them, to help build them, help them do so.
Right.
Tougher, to be good friends to each other, so that way we each other at the same time. Follow me, Big Boy Sam with 2 M's on IG. Follow me, Sammy Mumphrey on LinkedIn.
Get out there, take a hike, enjoy nature, get fresh air. That helps a lot.
Let's plan one. We got a bike ride coming up in September. We'll put the information out there. Definitely health and wellness is a very, very important component. We also have a camping festival as well. So if anybody else have any questions, tune in and keep tuning in every week. And we'll go from there.
Absolutely, guys. Be blessed. See you next Wednesday. Tell a friend, spread the news, and let's help this movement grow.
All right. Have a good one.